The night before her wedding, her mother cut her hair and said something she would never forget. Emma sat quietly in front of the mirror, staring at herself in the white wedding robe. The room around her was filled with flowers, makeup brushes, curling irons, and laughter from bridesmaids in the hallway. But inside her chest, there was only fear. Tomorrow was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Yet all she could think about was one question. What if I'm not ready? At 32 years old, Emma had built a successful life in New York, a good career, a beautiful apartment, a man who loved her deeply, but marriage felt different, permanent, terrifying. Because growing up, she had watched love fall apart. Her parents divorced when she was 15, and after that night, nothing in their home ever felt safe again. The screaming, the silence, the slammed doors. Emma remembered all of it, especially her mother crying quietly in the kitchen after everyone went to sleep. Back then, Emma promised herself something. I will never end up broken like that. And now, on the night before her own wedding, that terrified little girl inside her had suddenly returned. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Her mother walked into the room carrying an old wooden box. Linda was 61 now. Soft silver strands framed her face, gentle eyes, calm voice. She looked at Emma and smiled carefully. Your bridesmaids sent me away, she laughed softly. Apparently I'm too emotional. Emma forced a small smile. Her mother immediately noticed something was wrong. Mama knows that face, she said quietly. Emma looked down. I'm scared. Linda sat beside her slowly. Of tomorrow? Emma nodded. What if marriage changes everything? She whispered. What if one day he stops loving me? What if I become unhappy like you were? The room became still. Linda looked toward the mirror for a long moment before answering. Then she said something unexpected. Do you know what my biggest regret was? Emma shook her head. Linda smiled sadly. Not the divorce. Emma looked surprised. My biggest regret, Linda continued softly, was that I stopped loving myself long before your father stopped loving me. Emma felt tears forming immediately. Her mother opened the old wooden box. Inside were photographs, faded letters, and a pair of silver scissors. Emma blinked. What's that? Linda held the scissors gently. The night before my wedding, my mother cut my hair. Emma stared quietly. She told me a woman should never walk into a new chapter carrying the weight of an old one. Linda smiled faintly. And tomorrow you begin a new chapter too. Emma laughed nervously through tears. So this is some emotional family haircut ritual? Linda laughed softly. Maybe. Then she gently touched Emma's hair. When you were little, Linda whispered, you used to sit between my knees while I brushed your hair before school. Emma smiled instantly. You cried every single morning. Because you brushed too hard. That's because your hair tangled like wild vines, Linda replied, laughing. For the first time that evening, Emma relaxed. Linda slowly began brushing through her daughter's long brown hair. And suddenly, Emma felt like a child again. Safe. Loved. Home. You know, Linda said quietly, people think weddings are about finding the perfect person. Emma looked at her reflection. But they're really about choosing someone over and over again, even when life becomes difficult. Emma swallowed hard. What if I fail at it? Linda paused. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered. You will fail sometimes. Emma looked shocked. You'll both say the wrong things. You'll disappoint each other. You'll have seasons where love feels effortless, and seasons where it feels like work. Then Linda gently tucked a strand behind Emma's ear. But real love survives because two people keep returning to each other. Tears rolled silently down Emma's face. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Linda immediately shook her head. You don't need to become fearless to deserve love. That sentence broke something open inside her. For years, Emma thought strong women never doubted themselves. But sitting there beside her mother, she suddenly realized, even women who are afraid can still choose love. Linda picked up the scissors carefully. "May I?" she asked softly. Emma nodded. A few inches of hair fell gently onto the white floor. Nothing dramatic, just enough to feel different, enough to feel new. As Linda continued trimming soft layers around Emma's face, she spoke quietly. "The world tells women that beauty belongs to youth." She smiled through the mirror. "But I think beauty is really about becoming yourself." Emma listened carefully. "At 20, you try to be perfect. At 30, you try to survive. At 40, you learn boundaries. At 50, you stop apologizing. And somewhere along the way," Linda touched her daughter's cheek gently, "you finally realize you were worthy all along." Emma started crying harder now. Not because she was sad, but because she suddenly understood how deeply her mother loved her. All those years after the divorce, her mother still believed in love. That realization changed everything. "Mom," Emma whispered. "Yes? Were you ever scared before your wedding?" Linda laughed softly. "Terrified." Emma wiped tears from her cheeks.
Then why did you do it? Linda thought quietly for a moment. Then she smiled. Because love is always a risk. But some people are worth the risk. The room fell silent again. Outside, bridesmaids were laughing downstairs. Music drifted softly through the house. Life was continuing, and for the first time all evening, Emma no longer wanted to run from tomorrow. Linda finished styling the final layer and stepped back. "There," she whispered. Emma slowly looked up into the mirror. Her hair framed her face softly now. Elegant, natural, timeless. But it wasn't really the haircut that made her emotional. It was the woman staring back at her. She looked peaceful, ready. Not because fear disappeared, but because love had become bigger than fear. Linda suddenly reached into the wooden box again. She pulled out an old photograph. It was taken on Linda's wedding day decades earlier. Young smile, bright eyes, hopeful heart. Emma stared at the picture carefully. "You looked happy." "I was," Linda replied gently. Emma frowned slightly, but things still fell apart. Linda nodded. "Yes." Then she smiled softly. "But that doesn't mean the love wasn't real." Emma felt chills run through her entire body. So many people believed failed relationships erased all the beautiful moments inside them. But maybe that wasn't true. Maybe love could still matter, even if it didn't last forever. Linda took Emma's hand gently. "Don't walk into marriage afraid of heartbreak." Emma looked at her mother quietly. Walk into it willing to be fully loved. At that moment, Emma finally understood something important. Her mother's divorce had not made her weak. It made her wiser, kinder, more human. And despite everything, she survived. She still chose softness. That was strength, real strength. The clock slowly passed midnight. Tomorrow, Emma would walk down the aisle. Tomorrow, music would play. Families would cry. Photographs would freeze moments forever. But tonight was about two women, a mother, a daughter, and the quiet passing of courage from one generation to another. Before leaving the room, Linda kissed Emma gently on the forehead. Then she whispered, "No matter what happens in life, never abandon yourself inside love." Emma closed her eyes as tears rolled down her cheeks. "I won't," she whispered back. The next morning, sunlight poured through the curtains. Emma stood in front of the mirror wearing her wedding dress. Her hair fell perfectly around her shoulders. But the most beautiful thing about her wasn't the dress, or the makeup, or the hairstyle. It was the calm in her eyes. Downstairs, guests began arriving. Music filled the garden. Her father adjusted his tie nervously. Bridesmaids fixed flowers. Someone cried before the ceremony even started. And then Emma saw her mother standing quietly near the aisle. Their eyes met. No words were needed. Because both women understood something now. Love is never about perfection. It's about courage. the courage to stay soft in a hard world. The courage to trust again after pain, the courage to let yourself be seen completely. As Emma began walking down the aisle, she suddenly remembered something her mother said the night before. Some people are worth the risk, and for the first time in her life, fear no longer controlled her. Love did.